Anakin arrived at the Chancellor's office on Coruscant with his heart racing, overcome with fear from the visions that tormented him about Padme. He threw open the doors, and before his eyes, the scene that would change everything unfolded. Mace Windu stood firm, wielding his purple-bladed lightsaber, piercing Palpatine's weakened body, who let out one last scream before falling. The silence that followed was overwhelming, as if time had stopped at that moment. The young Jedi felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The man who had promised him the power to save the woman he loved lay dead before him. Anakin's eyes filled with tears as he watched Palpatine's body fall, the expression of terror frozen on his face. He couldn't help thinking of all the conversations, the promises, and the trust he had placed in the Chancellor over the years. In his mind, it was as if the only hope of keeping Padme alive had been snatched from his hands. His heart was racing, and anger burned in his veins, mixed with despair. Windu, turning and seeing Anakin, immediately realized the gravity of the situation. Anakin, he was the Sith Lord, the Republic's greatest enemy. "It's over, we've won," said Windu, still breathing heavily after the confrontation. But the words sounded empty to the young knight. He couldn't hear reason, only the echo of loss. To Anakin, Windu hadn't just saved the galaxy. He had just condemned Padme. The image of his beloved in pain mingled with the sight of Palpatine's fallen body, and it became unbearable. "You don't understand. He was the only one who could help me. He knew how to save Padme," Anakin shouted, his voice choked with rage. Windu approached, trying to remain calm. "Senator Padme? What are you talking about?" But Anakin was no longer listening. The fire of the dark side grew within him, fueled by fear. Each word from Windu seemed only to increase the distance between them. The room, lit by the windows of Coruscant, became an invisible battlefield, ready to explode. In a sudden movement, Anakin activated his blue lightsaber. The blade flashed, reflecting off his distraught face. Windu instinctively raised his weapon, the purple glow meeting the blue with an intensity that lit up the entire office. "Stop, Anakin! What are you doing?" shouted the Jedi Master, trying to restrain him. But the young man could not control himself. Pain and anger drove him to attack, as if only confrontation could express the turmoil that consumed him inside. The clash of blades echoed through the room, and the two began to fight fiercely. Anakin lunged with quick, impetuous blows, driven by rage. Windu, on the other hand, remained steady and technical, defending himself with mastery. Still, the Master sensed the growing strength of the Chosen One, something that made each attack more difficult to contain. "Calm down, Anakin. This isn't you," insisted Windu, as he dodged a blow that could have cut off his arm. The fight raged through the office, destroying furniture, breaking walls, and leaving deep marks on the environment. Anakin had no control. He was like a hurricane driven by pain. Each blow carried not only power, but also despair. "You killed him. You took everything from me," he roared, pushing Windu with a series of attacks that the Master had to contain with great effort. Windu tried to avoid counterattacking with full force, knowing that hurting Anakin would mean losing the Chosen One forever. At one point, Windu managed to push Anakin back with a precise counterattack, creating a few steps of distance between them. "He deceived you, don't you see? He was always a Sith," cried Windu, but Anakin would not accept it. The young knight's contorted face showed that it was no longer just about logic or truth. It was pure emotion, fear, and attachment. "It doesn't matter. I needed him. Without him, Padme will die," Anakin yelled, his voice trembling as if begging for something unattainable. Windu shook his head sadly. "Fear speaks through you. It is leading you to the dark side." But Anakin just advanced again, ignoring any warning. The clash of blades echoed again, blue against purple. It was the symbol of the struggle between Anakin's attachment and the discipline of the Jedi Order. With each blow, Windu tried to restrain the young man, but he could clearly see how the pain made him more unpredictable and dangerous. "Think, Anakin. Don't be a slave to fear," said Windu, blocking another devastating blow. But the young man was in no condition to listen. Each sentence seemed only to increase his fury, as if Windu were the real enemy. Anakin felt he had to win. He had to punish the one who had taken away his only hope. The duel became increasingly intense, and the possibility of a tragic ending grew with each passing moment. At the height of the fight, Anakin launched an aggressive strike toward Windu, but his fury caused him to lose his accuracy. The Jedi Master, alert, seized the moment and raised his hand, unleashing a powerful force push. The impact threw Anakin violently against the wall, causing the young man to drop his lightsaber and fall to the floor in a daze. The sharp sound echoed through the room, and for a moment, the heavy breathing of both men was the only thing that filled the silence. Windu stood firm, but his gaze was heavy with regret. He did not want to hurt Anakin, but he needed to restrain him before it was too late. Anakin remained motionless for a few seconds, trying to catch his breath. As he pushed himself up from the floor, the pain came not only from his body, but also from his mind. He brought his hand to his head as if he were being consumed by a terrible vision. Tears streamed from his eyes, and his hardened expression gave way to that of a broken man. "I just wanted to save her," he murmured between sobs, referring to Padme. The anger that had previously driven him seemed to dissipate, giving way to an even deeper emptiness. Windu approached slowly, keeping his lightsaber on just in case. "You need to understand, Skywalker. What you sought in him never existed. It was just manipulation." Anakin looked up, his eyes red from crying. The Master watched him silently, understanding that he was not just facing a rebellious knight, but a desperate young man struggling with his own emotions. Before Windu could say more, the communicator attached to his belt began to vibrate and projected a hologram. The small blue image revealed Bail Organa, visibly alarmed. "Master Windu, the Senate has received an urgent message." It was transmitted directly from the Chancellor's office. "It says that the Jedi have attempted to seize power and are enemies of the Republic. The Chancellor has already authorized measures to hunt them down." The words echoed like thunder. Palpatine's lifeless body lay there, but his influence still poisoned the galaxy. Windu closed his eyes for a moment, understanding the extent of the trap. Even before his arrival at the office, Palpatine had laid the groundwork to ensure his victory, dead or alive. Alongside Bail, other senators appeared in the background amid the chaos, confirming that the accusations had already spread. The Master knew that the situation was beyond control. It was not enough to have defeated the Sith. The entire order was now marked for extermination. As he listened, Anakin began to rise from the floor. His face was still contorted with pain, but reality hit him brutally. Palpatine had deceived him until the end, using his fear as a weapon. Now, even in death, he had turned everyone against the Jedi. "So, that's what it was all along," Anakin muttered, as if finally coming to his senses. He realized that all the suffering did not come only from the loss of Palpatine, but from the illusion that he depended on him to save Padme. Windu turned off his lightsaber, holstering it, and replied firmly to the hologram. "Senator, resist the pressure. We can still reveal the truth, but first we must protect our own." Bail nodded, but his expression showed concern. "The city is ablaze with rumors, Master Windu. Republic guards are already on the move. Be careful." The projection disappeared, and the room fell silent again, broken only by the distant sound of traffic on Coruscant. Anakin approached, head bowed, his voice hoarse. "I was a fool. I almost destroyed everything by believing lies." Windu looked at the young man seriously, but without rancor. "There is still time, Skywalker. What matters is what you do from this moment on. The Force always offers a way back." The Master reached out his hand to help him up. This time, Anakin accepted it. A weight seemed to lift from Anakin's shoulders, even though there was still pain. He wiped away his tears and tried to compose himself, but his mind was still tormented by the visions. What he had seen of Padme could have been just a figment of his fear, but the feeling was so real that it ate away at him inside. Windu's communicator was used again, but this time to transmit an emergency message to the other masters of the Order. Attention, everyone. Palpatine is dead, but he has activated a protocol against us. Jedi are being hunted across the galaxy. Survive, resist, and join the temple. The transmission echoed through the devices of those who still lived, and in different corners of the galaxy, masters and knights managed to move in time to escape the first attacks. Anakin listened to every word and felt something change inside him. The hatred that had driven him turned into determination. He realized he could still fight not only to save Padme, but to protect all the Jedi who were in danger. His fall seemed to have been interrupted by the shock of reality. "What do we do now?" he asked, looking up at Windu. The master replied seriously, "We'll figure that out later. Now let's go to the temple. That's where the fight will continue." Anakin took a deep breath, gathered his lightsaber, and walked alongside Windu. They both knew that the battle ahead would be even more difficult than the one that had just taken place. Palpatine's death had not ended the war. It had only changed its rules. The Jedi would no longer fight against a hidden Sith Lord, but against the Republic itself, which they had once sworn to protect. And in Anakin's heart, the flame of hope and fear still burned, waiting for what was to come next. The transport carrying Windu and Anakin landed on the platform near the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. What was once a symbol of wisdom and protection was now surrounded by clone troops, lined up in attack formation. The night sky was streaked with Republic ships, lighting up the horizon with trails of fire. Windu clenched his fist and said gravely, "It has begun. They want to wipe out the Order once and for all." Anakin stared at the scene, his eyes fixed but without hesitation. The fear that had dominated him before had been replaced by determination. As they advanced toward the main entrance, the clones immediately opened fire. Their lightsabers ignited in perfect synchrony, Windu's purple and Anakin's blue, reflecting the glare of the shots. Each saber strike cut through the air with precision, repelling blaster shots in all directions. Anakin advanced with controlled fury, channeling his energy to protect, not to destroy. Windu watched him out of the corner of his eye and recognized that the young man now fought like a true Jedi. With each step, more clone bodies fell, but the soldiers advanced in relentless waves. They were trained not to hesitate, and the numbers were against them. Still, Anakin did not retreat. "I will not allow them to destroy what remains of the Order," he shouted, dodging a shot and disarming two soldiers at once. Windu nodded. "Then fight, Chosen One. Show what it means to bring balance to the Force." The words gave the young knight more strength, and he plunged even deeper into the battle. When they finally made it through the main entrance, they were greeted by a devastating sight. The temple's great hall was engulfed in fire, debris, and the bodies of Padawans and masters. A few survivors were still holding out in isolated spots, but the situation was critical. Windu raised his voice. "Jedi, gather together. Hold out until the end." From the back of the hall, 3 knights appeared, joining them. The glow of the sabers multiplied, rekindling hope in the hearts of those who still breathed. Anakin advanced to the center of the hall, dodging shots and cutting down entire groups of clones. His movements were fast and brutal, but now guided by clarity of purpose. There was no more room for doubt. Padme was alive and safe, and that gave him the strength to fight with all his heart for the Order that could still be saved. Each stroke of his lightsaber reflected his determination not to allow the Jedi to become extinct. Windu noticed the difference. Anakin was no longer an impetuous apprentice, but a warrior in tune with his mission. The fighting spread through corridors and stairwells, where clones continued to arrive in ever-increasing numbers. The Jedi fought in small cells, covering each other, but the situation was one of total encirclement. Windu ordered them to retreat toward the main hall to keep their defense centralized. "Alone we fall, but together we stand," he shouted, gathering the survivors around him and Anakin. Their unity gave strength to their resistance. During the battle, Anakin found young Padawans hiding in one of the rooms. Their eyes reflected fear, but when they saw the knight raise his blue lightsaber in their defense, they felt courage. "Come with me," "No one will touch you," he said firmly. He guided them back to the main group, and the presence of the children only increased the Jedi's determination. It was not just a fight for survival, but for the continuity of their order. "They will not extinguish our flame," Anakin said to Windu, who replied, "Then carry it, Skywalker. The future is in your hands." At the height of the battle, Republic ships bombarded the outer sections of the temple, shaking the structures and scattering debris across the floor. The chaos intensified, but Anakin used the Force to protect the younglings and block collapses. His presence inspired the others, who fought with greater vigor. Even the most experienced masters realized that, at that moment, the Chosen One was fulfilling the leadership role that had always been destined for him. The clones began to retreat slightly, reorganizing their formations to surround the Jedi again. Windu noticed the maneuver and warned, "They want to suffocate us, like hunters around their prey." Anakin swung his saber, preparing for the next wave. "Then let's break the siege before it closes in." Combining attacks, the two masters led a charge, breaking through enemy lines and clearing a path for more survivors to regroup. The sound of lightsabers became the music of resistance within the temple. In the midst of the fight, Anakin felt the Force flow through him like never before. There was no fear, only purpose. His movements were clear, his decisions instantaneous, and each action seemed guided by something greater. He felt that, for the first time, he was not being manipulated or carried away by emotion. He was in control. This clarity allowed him to channel his power devastatingly against his enemies. Windu, even in the midst of combat, noticed and muttered to himself, "Perhaps, after all, he is the balance." The floor of the hall was covered with debris and bodies, but the Jedi still resisted. Despite the losses, the flame of hope grew. Each survivor knew that this fight was not just for themselves, but for the entire galaxy. Anakin, alongside Windu, held the front line with determination. He was no longer the desperate young man who had almost lost himself to Palpatine, but someone who had found clarity in truth. The duel in the office had removed the last veil of illusion, and now only duty remained. When the first ray of sunlight began to appear on the horizon of Coruscant, the Jedi were still fighting inside the temple. The day was dawning, but the war for the Order's survival was just beginning. Windu looked at Anakin and said, "Tonight we resisted, but the war has only just begun." The young knight raised his blue lightsaber, still gleaming, and replied firmly, "Then we will fight to the end. No Jedi will be forgotten." The battle was far from over, but fate had changed forever. As the fighting seemed to intensify endlessly, the sound of approaching ships echoed over the temple. The clones redoubled their attack, believing that reinforcements had arrived to crush the Jedi once and for all. But when they landed, they were not soldiers but allies. The small figure of Yoda leaped from the ship, wielding his green lightsaber with unmatched agility, while Obi-Wan disembarked right behind him, lightsaber in hand. The hearts of the survivors rose. The two masters had returned, and with them the hope of resistance. Yoda advanced through the corridors of the temple, dodging shots with quick movements, and each jump he made knocked down entire groups of clones. "Strong in the Force, this place still is. Defend we must," he declared, as he guided young Padawans out of the combat zone. Obi-Wan immediately joined Anakin and Windu, fitting into their formation. "We arrived in time, it seems," he said, blocking shots with precision. Anakin smiled slightly. "You took your time," Obi-Wan replied. "You've given me worse scares." With the arrival of the two masters, the battle gained new momentum. Windu remained in strategic command, but it was clear that Anakin had taken a central position alongside him. Not only because of his strength, but because of the inspiration he conveyed. The surviving Jedi looked to him and saw in the young man the symbol of resistance. Every order he gave was followed immediately, and his courage infected even the most exhausted. Obi-Wan watched closely, recognizing that his apprentice had finally found the balance he had always sought. Meanwhile, the Senate convened in emergency session. News of Palpatine's death and the alleged Jedi betrayal spread amid heated debates. Bail Organa tried to contain the hysteria, calling for prudence. We cannot accept accusations without concrete evidence. Palpatine hid a lot from us. However, many senators, overcome by fear, demanded drastic measures against the Jedi. The absence of clear leadership after the Chancellor's death left the atmosphere chaotic. In the temple, the fighting reached another level. Jedi reinforcements began to arrive after Windu's message, coming from different parts of the galaxy. Among them, respected masters such as Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi landed, joining the fight. The main hall was now lit by the multicolored glow of lightsabers, transforming the resistance into a solid force against the troops. The battle was no longer just about survival, but a direct counterattack. Plo Koon joined Anakin in formation and commented, "The weight of this war rests on all of us. But I see something different in you, Skywalker." Anakin replied, panting as he dodged shots. "Different or not, we cannot fail now." Ki-Adi-Mundi, meanwhile, led a group of Padawans to the rear, showing that despite his age, his wisdom was still vital. The presence of these masters gave cohesion to the resistance, making the fight more organized. Yoda watched Anakin from afar, noticing how the young man now inspired others. Leadership in him, the Force revealed. Carry the future. Ready he is. Windu, standing beside him, nodded silently. He had seen up close how anger had almost consumed the Chosen One, but now he witnessed his transformation. Anakin was not fighting out of fear or attachment, but out of duty. The difference was clear, and it made him the warrior that the prophecy had always foretold. The battle went on for hours, but with the arrival of each new master, the Jedi managed to stabilize the situation. Clones were defeated, ships shot down, and corridors retaken. The temple, once engulfed in chaos, was beginning to be reclaimed. There was still loss and pain, but the collective spirit was growing stronger. The enemy no longer saw a divided order, but a union of masters and Padawans fighting side by side. The Force seemed to respond, flowing intensely across the battlefield. While fighting, Obi-Wan approached Anakin and said, "You are leading everyone. I never thought I would see this day, but it is real. You are on the right path." Anakin replied seriously, "I am only doing what I should have done from the beginning. There are no more doubts in me, Master. Only the certainty that the Order must survive." Obi-Wan felt proud, but he also knew that this was only the beginning. The war against the clones and against misinformation in the Senate was still far from over. In the Senate, disputes continued to rage. Some senators believed in Palpatine until the end, accusing the Jedi of being conspirators. Others, such as Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, joined forces to show that something had been wrong from the start. Palpatine's absence, however, left a dangerous power vacuum, and factions were already beginning to organize to fill the space. The Republic was on the verge of political collapse, while the Jedi fought for their lives. Yoda, meeting with Windu, stated, "With courage they fought, the Jedi, but greater will be the test. We must restore the confidence of the people." Windu agreed. "We won tonight, but if the Senate condemns us, no temple will withstand it." Both knew that victory on the battlefield did not mean survival in the political arena. The information war would be as tough as any lightsaber duel. Anakin remained on the front line until the last shot was fired. The hall fell silent, with only the sound of tired breathing and lightsabers being turned off. The Jedi looked at each other, aware that they had won an impossible battle. Yoda then declared, "We will survive. Stronger, perhaps, but together we must remain." Anakin raised his lightsaber and looked around. "Then let us fight together, not as masters or Padawans, but as guardians of the galaxy's peace." The temple lay in ruins, but the Order had endured. The first light of morning illuminated Coruscant as the Jedi, led by Windu, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, marched toward the Senate. Around them, clone troops still tried to hold them back, firing incessantly at the formation. But the lightsabers cut a steady path, deflecting shots and knocking down soldiers who dared to approach. The Jedi's advance seemed impossible to stop, and the population watched in shock as the streets were transformed into a battlefield. With each step, the tension increased. For many citizens, the sight of dozens of Jedi marching armed toward the Senate was the very harbinger of the tyranny that Palpatine had announced in his last message. Whispers of fear spread, and the assembled senators prepared for an inevitable confrontation. But the Jedi did not come as usurpers. They came to restore the truth. The fate of the Republic would be decided within that great hall. When the Senate gates opened, the Jedi entered side by side, making room among the guards who retreated in astonishment. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the sound of footsteps echoing in the central chamber. Senators whispered to each other, frightened, expecting the Jedi to claim power by force. But Windu stepped forward to the center and turned off his lightsaber. The solemn gesture made everyone hold their breath. With a firm voice, Windu spoke. The Sith Lord, Darth Sidious, lived among us disguised as Chancellor Palpatine. He manipulated this war, poisoned the Republic, and attempted to destroy the Jedi Order. His latest lie was to say that we came to seize power. We are here not as tyrants, but as guardians. We do not fight against the Republic. We fight to protect it. The impact of his words echoed through the chamber, awakening doubt in many who believed Palpatine's accusations. In the audience, Bail Organa stood up. I saw the manipulation in his eyes. He deceived us as he deceived everyone. The Jedi are not traitors. Beside him, Padme stood, visibly weakened by her advanced pregnancy, but firm in her presence. The Republic needs the truth. We cannot let fear rule us. I have seen with my own eyes the Jedi fight to save lives, not to take them. Her clear voice touched the hearts of those present. The murmurs began to change tone. Some senators were still suspicious, but the weight of Bail and Padme's words, respected figures, tipped the scales. Anakin, standing next to Windu, remained upright, knowing that now his image was as important as the truth spoken. Many watched him, remembering that he had been close to Palpatine, and if even he was on the side of the Order, there was some truth to that narrative. As the debate continued, Padme began to feel contractions. Bail approached, helping her discreetly out of the chamber, while Anakin followed her worriedly. Inside a private room, doctors rushed to attend to her. Moments later, the cries of two babies echoed. Luke and Leia had been born. Anakin held one of his children in his arms, tears streaming down his face. He had not lost Padme, nor his children. The prophecy was not about destruction, but about rebirth. Back in the Senate, the news spread quickly. Padme was fine, and the children of the Chosen One had come into the world. The symbolism was undeniable. A new era was dawning. Anakin was called a hero, not only for fighting alongside Windu at the temple, but for resisting the dark side and finding balance. His personal victory also became the victory of the Jedi Order. The people needed a symbol, and there it was. The Jedi Council, now reconstituted with the survival of the Masters, met to decide the next steps. The most delicate issue was raised: Anakin's secret marriage to Padme. In times past, this would have been grounds for expulsion. But the war had changed everything. Mistakes we all make. But balance brought Skywalker, said Yoda. The council decided to forgive him, recognizing that attachment was not synonymous with doom, but a weakness to be understood and controlled. Thus, changes were implemented in the Order. The Jedi learned that total repression of emotions led to the same danger as blind indulgence. The new path would be more flexible, allowing Anakin to be not only a Jedi, but also a husband and father. The balance of the Force, after all, was not to deny life, but to live it in harmony. The Order emerged transformed, closer to the humanity it swore to protect. In the Senate, political tensions did not disappear immediately. Factions were still suspicious, but the presence of the Jedi in defense of the Republic and the influence of leaders such as Bail and Padme consolidated the victory of truth. The Republic, wounded, began to rebuild itself. And the Jedi, once hunted, were now seen as the saviors who had prevented the definitive rise of darkness. Trust would not be restored in a day, but the first step had been taken. Anakin walked through the corridors of the temple, now under reconstruction, with Luke in his arms. Padme accompanied him, smiling as she saw the serenity in her husband's eyes. Obi-Wan, at his side, commented in a brotherly tone, "You changed everything, Anakin. Maybe that's what the prophecy always meant." Windu added, "He faced the dark side and won, not just in combat, but within himself." Anakin looked up at the horizon of Coruscant, illuminated by a new dawn, and replied, "Then let this be the beginning, not just of a renewed republic, but of a more just Jedi order."